I'm Eric Perlman, and I'm not the best rock climber in the world, not even close. But in my 30 or so years on the ropes, I've worked with some of the finest climbers in the world. And in many ways, this program is their story, and the product of millions of man and woman hours of training, effort, and experimentation. It's taken generations to invent and refine the equipment and techniques that lead to successful rock climbing skills. With these skills, an aspiring climber can enjoy a lifetime of challenge and fun in this not completely sane sport. There are 5 different kinds of rock climbing, and each has its own special skills and techniques. The simplest is bouldering. Short, hard, and intense. No ropes, no hardware. Bouldering tends to stay pretty close to the ground, but since you have no protective gear, it's still plenty dangerous. Aid climbing is more like heavy construction than sport. Basically, aid climbers use nylon ladders called étriers to work their way up the rock. And of course, a little extra hardware doesn't hurt. Leading is the sharp end of the game. Clipping bolts or placing protective hardware as you go. Climb only the rock and leave no trace of your passage. Free soloing is 100% dangerous, no matter how experienced you are. Up here with no ropes, no hardware, there's absolutely no room for error. Then there's top roping, the perfect introduction to rock climbing skills. With a rope above you for every move, it frees the mind of all distractions, particularly fear, so you can concentrate on movement, technique, and problem solving. Now we're ready to set up a top rope. Dan Osmond holds the world record for jumping off cliffs on a climbing rope. If anyone knows this gear, he does.
The rope is your lifeline. You take good care of it, and it'll take good care of you.
Climbing ropes are made of continuous filament polyamide fibers 100,000 feet long. Each tiny fiber has a breaking strength of about 24 pounds. There are 366 of these fibers in a typical climbing rope, totaling 11.5 miles in length. The fibers are wound into yarns, which in turn are twisted into strands. Half the yarns are twisted one way and half the other, then mated together so that the rope will stretch straight when taking the load of a fall. 7 to 9 separate core strands are joined inside a braided sheath. When it's finished, a good climbing rope can hold a shock load of 5,000 to 6,000 pounds, with about 2/3 of the load taken by the core and about 1/3 by the sheath.
The way to inspect a rope is basically by feel and sight. Kind of run it back and forth, let it do its natural curve like this. And if something comes up where it takes a real sharp bend, then you know something's wrong with it. I would suggest retiring it at that point. Either cutting it there and using the rest of the rope, or just flat out giving it up. You want to make sure that you've got a nice fresh rope with you when you're climbing at all times, because you don't want to die.
Here are a couple of simple tips for protecting your climbing rope. Don't leave it in direct sunlight because ultraviolet rays will eventually break down the nylon. Don't step on it. Don't let it get fouled with dirt or chemicals. And keep it away from flame.
Your most sound and basic anchor in the world is a bolt drilled straight into the rock. These bolts are designed to have 5,000 to 6,000 pounds of shear strength, meaning the sideways pulling on the bolt. It holds about 4,000 pounds of outward pulling strength. So you place a hanger on the bolt. This hanger allows you to clip a carabiner to the eye, which is the hole in the hanger. You clip your carabiners to it. You take your nylon webbing, whatever size it may be, and you clip it to your anchors. Now, as you can see here, even though they're both clipped, there's only weight on one of the bolts. The other bolt here has no weight on it whatsoever. So to make it equalized, it's very simple. All you do is you pull down from the center between the bolts, put a twist in it, affix your carabiners to that. As you can see now, there's equalized pressure on both bolts. And no matter which way I pull it, as you can see, the webbing is traveling and leaving the equalization up to the webbing, distributing the weight equally throughout the anchor. If your anchors are set back away from the lip or the edge of the cliff, you have a lot of abrasion going on. As one climber comes up, the belayer is pulling down. So you've got all this friction going on with the rope going over the edge. You want to put on what you call an extender rope, which is connected to your anchor. That allows your rope to hang free so that it doesn't get abraded or cut in any way. So you want to keep it nice and free of the rock, hanging real clean out there in space, so you get some good sensitivity between the belayer and the climber. When I'm top roping, I like to use at least one locking carabiner in the system versus having just two unlocking carabiners, and let me show you why. Because with an unlocking beaner, if it's sitting over any kind of an edge, it can easily be forced open like so. With a locking carabiner, with the gate screwed down, there's no way that that gate's going to open.
So why should we trust our lives to these dinky slivers of aluminum? Modern carabiners are made of aerospace aluminum alloy and drop forged at 1.2 million pounds of pressure. Elaborately shaped carabiners are hot forged with the metal coming out of the furnace at 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. Others are cold forged, stamped out at room temperature. Different carabiner designs vary in strength, but the best are rated about 5,000 to 6,000 pounds of force in the lengthwise direction. This small locking carabiner is rated at 24 kilonewtons, about 5,400 pounds of force, but it tested out at 32.9, about 7,500 pounds. Nice margin of safety. Not every crag is equipped with bolts on top. Sometimes you have to find a tree or a large boulder, or place your own protective hardware. We use the same hardware for anchors as we use to climb the rock. I don't recommend pitons, even though they're safe, because they cause permanent damage to the rock, both when you put them in and when you take them out. When you use a boulder, make sure it's big, stable, and heavy, and that your slings completely encircle it and your direction of force will not displace it. When you use a tree, make sure that you run slings around it to take the load. Just sliding your rope around a tree can damage the bark and eventually kill the tree. Nuts and spring-loaded camming devices are the best natural pro. And in a parallel-sided crack, nothing beats a friend. You just depress the trigger, lay it in there, make sure the cams are properly contacting, not too tight, not too loose, and there you go. You can hang a truck off it. Make sure that the cams and stems are oriented in line with the direction of the potential load, so they don't get bent or twisted. Nuts have tapered sides to wedge in tight when you slot them in and load them up. They're totally trustworthy if you place them correctly, but if you fall on them hard, they wedge in so tight, you'll need a tool to pry them out.
When setting up an anchor using your own pro, make sure that the rock is solid. If you have more than one crack, use them. Try to use at least 3 pieces if you can. The cordelette system is state-of-the-art for equalizing an anchor. They use a 15-foot piece of climbing rope. They connect the pieces, bring a bight down between each piece, and tie a knot so that in case one piece fails, I don't shock the system.
In setting up the top rope system, there's 4 key points of contact. There's the belayer, the rope, the anchor, and the harness. Now there are dozens of kinds of harnesses out there, the most popular of which is the double pass-through buckle. What you do is you feed it through the buckle, you cinch it up, pull it back so that you can feed the tail back through to lock off the buckle to make the system secure. That's mandatory to be sure that the buckle is safe and not going to come undone on you. Okay, if you don't want your belayer to be spun upside down, then you need to use a little bit of extra protection like this, which is a full body harness, which has straps that go all the way around the shoulders, crisscrosses in the back, comes around the waist as well as the legs. That keeps the climber or belayer from being spun upside down and keeps them upright the whole time.
Today's climbing harness is made of layers of flat and tubular webbing, stuffed with foam, then stitched and bar tacked with a bonded nylon thread. Since the load of a fall gets spread between the waist and legs, strength of materials vary, but here's what counts. When a finished harness is tested on a dynamometer, it should hold 3,600 pounds. This one went way past 4,000 pounds without popping a stitch.
Okay, now the best knot in climbing is your follow-through figure eight, because it looks like a figure eight, and that's how you set it up. With about a 2-foot tail, you follow through your leg loops, your swami loop, and the pattern of the knot that you set up. Keep it nice and neat, straight, cinch it up, and then with the tail you can back it up with a half hitch, just like that. If you're at all concerned about rockfall, you should definitely wear a helmet, because all it takes is about 120 feet for a rock to reach about 60 miles an hour.
Which could crack your skull, Dad.
So that's why you wear a helmet.
A regulation baseball weighs 5 ounces and can fracture an unprotected skull at 60 miles an hour. Here's what it looks like. A hit in the head by a rock at that size and speed would probably cause permanent injuries. A hardshell helmet can reduce the risk of injuries by helping disperse the forces of impact. A 50-inch fall without a helmet can generate an impact on your skull of 328 Gs. Even a short climbing fall like that onto your unprotected head can damage or kill you. With a hardshell helmet, the impact drops to 82 Gs, 1/4 the impact.
The most basic belay is a hip belay. Now you just put the rope around your back, you take a locking carabiner, clip it to the lead end of the rope which goes to the climber, and to make the system work, you stop the rope with your brake hand on one side of your hip, which creates friction around your back, which makes it lock with the carabiner. That stops the climber from falling. Now I don't like this system much. What I do like is a real belay device. Okay, with the real belay device, you take a bight of rope, place it through the hole, take a locking carabiner, clip the rope, and you're ready to go. If the climber should fall, you pull back on the brake hand and the friction of the rope locks off the device and stops the fall. The latest advance in belay technology is the gree-gree. The way it works is you pass your rope over the spring-loaded cam, you close it up, clip it to your locking carabiner, and if a fall should happen, it automatically locks the rope in place and stops the climber from falling.
In belaying for a lead climber, the key is to move upward with the fall to give the softest possible landing. You lock off and move upward in one motion. A top rope belay is simple. Keep the rope snug without crowding the climber, providing upward assistance by hauling him up like a turkey. If the belayer is lighter than the climber, anchor to something sturdy so you won't get yanked upward in a fall. A climber on top rope should never have to worry about the length of a fall.
There's only a few signals to remember in climbing.
You're on belay.
Okay, Dad. Climbing. Up rope. Slack. Watch me. Attention. Oh, falling. Falling. I'm at the anchors, Dad. Lower me down.
There are many ways to rappel down a rope. I'm going to show you the best two for climbing. This is what you call a figure eight. You take a bight of rope, you feed it through the large eye of the device, over the post, and you clip the small eye of the device to your locking carabiner. Now keep your brake hand down here by your hip, which creates a steeper line of friction for the rope that's going through the device and gives you better control for your descent. This is a rappel with a conventional belay device. You just take a bight of the rope, feed each loop through each hole in the device. Be sure that your locking carabiner clips to both loops. Grab the brake hand of your rope down by your hip to create a better friction for your device so that when you're descending you have better control.
Climbing shoes have changed radically in the last 20 years. In the beginning was the EB. They hurt, the rubber wasn't sticky, and the uppers were made of rubber-lined canvas. So not only did they not breathe, they didn't last either. The all-leather Robbins boot had no flex, no friction, and no sensitivity at all. The Fiere was the first of a new generation of sticky rubber shoes that opened our eyes to the possibilities of real adhesion on the rock. The Mariacher ushered in a new age of comfort, friction, and an anatomical last that put real power into the forefoot. World champion Francois Legrand can tell you more about the new generation of climbing shoes.
I'm going to try this route, which looks very steep and big holes. So probably I'm going to use my favorite shoes, very soft shoe, but you have a very good sensation on big footholds. I use them a lot on artificial walls because they are very easy to put on. I use this very soft shoe but with laces because the sensation under the foot is good, but I can use the edges and I use them for the competitions, very hard routes. This is harder, so you can use them on slab climbing and a very precise route on the rock. They are more comfortable, but maybe the sensation is not the same as the slippers. And I use this pair of shoes for the crack climbing because this high shoe can protect my ankles, and also this rubber is good for the friction in the cracks. And I don't use this shoe.
Humans don't have claws, suction cups, or sticky secretions on our hands and feet. All that we have for sticking on the rock is tension and counterpressure. Tension is simply leaning off of our arms and hands. Counterpressure is used in almost every climbing move we make. We're not just standing on a sidewalk here. We're smearing for friction, loading the inside and outside edges, searching for every knob and nubbin to give me body position and control. The key to climbing is don't fight gravity. Turn it to your advantage with tension and counterpressure. In underclinging, we pull out with our hands and push with our feet. Look, gravity wants to pull me downward. By leaning out on my hand, I can change some of that downward force into inward force, which helps my feet stick to the rock and puts me in position to move upward. In laybacks, the counterpressure is between pulling with our hands and pushing with our feet. In a hand jam, you flex the muscles to put counterpressure between the front and the back of the hand. In a foot jam, you torque the foot to put counterpressure between the sides. And in chimneys, the counterpressure is between your backside and your front side. And it's not wide enough to get good, secure hand jams. So I'm using counterpressure in the form of laying back the side of the crack, smearing with my left foot, putting my right foot against the right side of the crack. Till I get that bomber hand jam. Whew.
In face climbing, you never really know what you're going to run into, so you got to be ready to grab any hold the rock throws at you. Like a nice deep pocket like this, a little mono dwell like this, or best of all, a nice big jug like that. And when you get one of those, it's usually party time. When you encounter a nice square cut edge, what you want to do is crimp it. Keep your fingers together, point your knuckles towards the sky, and you can even wrap your thumb on there for extra grip. Another technique is grabbing sloper holds like this one. What you want to do is, again, keep your fingers together, just get as much skin on the rock as you can, and pull like that. Another more advanced technique is opposing pressure. It's called gastoning, like this. And another thing you might run into too is a side pull, like this. And another thing you might run into is an undercling, like that. In face climbing, you're using a lot of textures, bumps, edges, smears, anything you can to get you up the rock. There's 3 basic techniques you're going to use with your feet. One is your outside edge, the other is your inside edge, and the last is just straight on. Inside edge, outside edge, and straight on. 2 more advanced foot techniques are heel hooking and toe hooking. When you're gassing out and pumping out on some really desperate route, these are 2 techniques that might just get you to the belay. One of the most important things when you crack climb is your jamming technique. And that's when you actually take your hand, put it in the crack, and kind of cup it so it holds you in there. You basically just take your hand, put it in the crack, and you just kind of expand it so it fits in there. And you'd be amazed how secure it feels. The hardest part is learning how to expand your hand just right to get a real secure fit in there. Right here, I'm gonna put my left hand in the crack, and just cup it in there, and it just really holds you in and enables you to do the next move. Right here, another really good hand jam. Right here, the crack's a little skinnier, and so I'm just gonna get a finger jam. Same technique, put my fingers in, kind of wedge them, and they hold me in there just like the hand jam does. So what you do is instead of putting your whole hand in the crack, you're just putting your fingers. Put your fingers in there, kind of wedge them in so they hold you. Again, right here, real good finger lock with the right hand. Put the fingers in there as far as they go. You just kind of wedge them in there, and they lock in real secure. And this really enables you just to pull up really hard to reach the next handholds. Right here, it's kind of flared. So what I do is I just kind of put my hand in there. Doesn't feel quite as secure as when the crack's real parallel, but I just move on as quick as I can and get up these better handholds, move on to easier ground, and then I can take a rest and prepare for the next hard section. When you're chimney climbing, you want to put your feet against one wall and your back and butt against the other to wedge yourself in the crack. You also want to look for any little smears or footholds or handholds that may make the chimney a little easier. You're wedging yourself in the crack, but you're still looking for any kind of face holds or jams or anything that's going to make it a little bit easier on you. Technique is everything in chimneys. It's just a real slow, melodic type of climbing. You don't want to rush anything, just one move at a time. Always maintain that really good wedge with your back and your feet, opposing pressure in the chimney.
A few more basic climbing techniques include the mantle, in which a pulling motion turns into a push and a high step, a wide pinch grip with the left hand and wrapping a rail with the right. A torquing toe jam gets more secure as you load it. A fist jam and a fist jam stack.
For a climber, reading the rock is like a sailor reading the ocean. With experience, you come to see the natural line and fit your body to it. On lower angle face climbing, the holds are extremely small. Power won't help you. The key is balance and control. You have to believe that your feet will stick on the smallest little undulations. was just beginning to climb. I was watching this incredible spider-like person. And I said, how do you get your feet to stick on such little things? And he says, well, I'd look at a hold, and I put my foot exactly there, and I say, stick. And it does. And it did. And they do. The power of the mind is strong. Wah! Put your weight over, stand up. I believe.
It's not so easy to trust your feet in friction climbing. A foot traverse can help us learn how. First key is to keep as much rubber against the rock as possible. By keeping my heels low, I get maximum surface contact. The second key is to keep the center mass away from the rock so that the downward force pushes the feet into the rock so that they can grip all the surface textures. Look, if I lean into the rock, my feet skid out. But if I lean away from the rock, they stick. I try to stay straight up and down and not lean into the rock. Trying to keep my toes relatively pointing upward so that I can get the maximum amount of rubber onto the rock. Just coming along, trusting the feet, putting the feet on the rock, feeling the little tiny rugosities.
One of the techniques we use for ascending vertical rock is a technique we call laybacking. And it works especially well when we have fins of rock or where we have a crack, where there's space between one wall and another. The idea here is completely opposition. Our arms are pulling out, our legs are pushing down and in. This is the gorilla lie back. The movements are they're powerful. My hands and feet are close together. This is a dry fly back for me. Longer movements. My body's a little bit more stretched out, so I'm conserving a little bit of strength. My hands are high. My feet are still pushing down and in. My arms are still pulling out. Another type of counter pressure is called stemming. This is where we use our legs on adjacent walls in opposition and counter pressure. So with my right leg, I'm going to find a little bit of a divot to press down. With my left leg, I'm going to use counter pressure, opposing that. I need to use a constant pressure to keep myself on the wall. And this opposition allows me to move up step by step. Occasionally, I can find a really good rest with this counter pressure, and I can take both hands off the wall and rest here. I can shake out. Sometimes we can use counter pressure with our hands. I'll bring my left foot in to bring my right foot up and stem in that manner.
Climbing is one of the most demanding sports I know of. It takes explosive power, strength training, endless hours of cranking on tiny muscles. You must stretch because a limber, supple muscle recovers faster. It's less likely to be pulled or torn, and it performs better. The fingers are very important to stretch. All your weight hangs on these tiny tendons and muscles. I stretch each one individually and gently pull on it, sideways as well. And then my whole hand. After getting my fingers warm, I like to do windmills. Just 25 windmills with both arms. This gets my core body temperature up, gets all the blood flowing. it's nice if you can just break a little sweat to get all your muscles heated up a little bit. And then I take my arms and I stretch them across my chest. This pulls out my deltoid muscles and really loosens my shoulders. Another good stretch is to take your arm and push your elbow down behind your head. It's a good stretch for your triceps. Once you get all the blood flowing, you can have a seat and start to stretch out your leg muscles and your hips. Good one to start with is just doing butterflies. Push your knees back. This should help your turnout and get your hips ready for that face climbing. To make any kind of progress, you're going to feel your muscles pulling more than you normally feel. As long as you stretch with a gradual motion, never forcing the stretch to the point of snapping any tendon or muscle or too much pain, then you're fine. But it will be uncomfortable if you're doing it right.
I'm François Legrand, coming from France, and I'm climbing in Rifle, Colorado. The next right hand looks very far, so I have to put my feet very high. Big cross. Push with my left foot more than my right foot to climb this kind of layback. And now traverse to the left. So it's exactly the same thing, but in the opposite side. Hola. Looks very small holes now. So better to choke before to take it. And rest my right hand. For the cracks. Now right foot high and jump. Now good rest. I'm happy to find.
Because I'm short, I've learned how to conserve energy on making long reaches. Here's two examples. One is what I'd consider my example and the most effective, and then the second example is what we see oftentimes, and what I've done myself as well. So here's my method. One move, one fluid move from the bottom to the top. And here's what we see often, which is the pumping action, where you go 1, 2, 3, up. 1, 2, 3. You're here, and you want to go up. And it's impossible. Not only is it impossible, but it takes a lot more strength. The best way is to go, okay, straight armed and up for it, in a dynamic type way so that the timing is there with you and you use a lot less strength. When climbing on an overhanging wall such as this one, it's very important to find rest points. It's not only important to go and get to the top, because oftentimes if we don't rest along the way, we don't make it to the top. So I'll show you some examples of how to do double toe locks. Here's one. You can see I'm applying pressure on both ends of my toes, and my arm is straight off, allowing me to rest. In other words, this would not be good rest if we were here. You have to bring it down in both positions, let this arm hang as well as this leg hang, and you find it's a good rest. And then I'm able to relax. Okay, let's see if I can find another one. Okay. Let's see. So the idea is to apply the pressure with one toe, bringing behind the other, and then finding the rest point. Again, this arm straight. Okay, let's see if we can find another one. Here's another one, again, allowing me to rest. Here's another trick again when climbing on an overhanging wall. When you have to go a long ways for a hold, it will help get you again relief from your body weight. We found that putting your body close to the wall helps take the strain off your arms. We found through training and through other specific performances that the closer our body is to the wall, the more effective we are and the easier it is to reach the top. So I'll show you some examples of how to bring your knee in, finishing out a move before going to the next hold. It's very important to watch my body position as I'm climbing because I'm going to exaggerate the moves each time. Okay, here's a good example. I place my foot, I bring my knee in, and then I go for the hold. Okay, again, I'll do the same thing. I'll bring my knee in, and I'll go for the hold. I'll give you an example of if I don't bring my knee in, and I want to go for the hold. If I'm here, my body's out away from the wall, and oh, it's hard for me to get to here. However, if I bring my body in, boom, the hold is right in front of me. Okay, and I can do this progressively up the wall. Until I get to the top. And there are no secrets to success, just a lot of hard work.
For the top French climbers, fluidity is an end unto itself. A climbing goal as important as completing the route. Some top climbers believe it's better to fail with grace and fluidity than to succeed with ugly, jerky movements. World Cup champion Francois Lombard is one of the most fluid climbers there is. Each move flows naturally into the next. Even on the toughest route, each carabiner clip leads to an upward hand movement or a quick dip of gymnastic chalk. Each sequence of moves leads to a resting point. Fluidity means a relaxed breathing pattern and smooth athletic action with no excess force or tension. Fluidity means maximum efficiency of movement, and most of the time, that leads to the highest chance of success. But even the best don't succeed on every problem. That's what makes this sport so good.
Stretching is the key to advanced movement. The drop knee, for example, allows me to bring my hips in for higher reaches, more powerful moves. To stretch for the drop knee, just place your leg forward, lean forward and stretch your hamstring. Pull your toe back to get an extra stretch. Then staying in the same place, just reach behind you, pull your foot up and stretch your quad. Hip flexibility is the key to the high step. Stiff hips mean low steps. Flexible hips mean high steps. For high step flexibility, just place your leg to the side and bend your knee. The more you bend your knee, the deeper the stretch. Hip flexibility lets me swivel, from one direction to the other. This lets me rest my arms, scan the route, and choose my next move. Shoulder flexibility allows the cross-through, using the bigger shoulder muscles and saving your smaller forearms. For shoulder flexibility, it's just like the move. You pull your shoulder across your chest. To stretch the opposing muscles, just lean against the rock and gently push your arm out.
It looks a quite technical route with many didles and not very steep. So, big undercling here. So I have to bring up my feet to go to the edge and clip the first bolt. Then I watch. Next far is quite far, so I must bring my feet quite high. Intermediate and the edge. A pinch. So I turn my body in the left side to catch a baguette. Very good hold where I can shake a little bit and clip the second bolt. And then the next hold is the edge. I can use with my right shoulder. Go high, left. And then now that's the ledge going to the left. So I push with my feet like a layback and keep your right foot high on the right. Turn my right foot inside and left quite high to the same ledge. Turn again the other side and match on this. On the right side I can see the edge, which is better than this big round hold, and use it to another edge. I match again on this hold and clip the bolt. Not very comfortable position. Now there are many corners and it's not so easy to see the holds, and you have to use your feet and push with the left hand. Catch a pinch again and with my right foot inside the corner, the diagonal, cross my feet, just feel the balance and go to a good hold. You catch a good rest.
There are thousands of moves and movement combinations in rock climbing. Some are big and clearly defined, others are subtle. These are some of the most important.
Seems to go to the right and then to the left. Probably a kind of layback in the first part and small edges on the top. We'll see.
No one ever masters all the skills of rock climbing. The point of the game is to never stop learning. In the end, it hardly matters whether you're pushing 515 or trying your first 5'9". What really counts is how much you enjoy this sport, the feel of the rock, the challenge of movement, and the simple beauty of stone and sky.